Good evening. We're back for another episode of Raf Silverstone's Safe Space podcast with Amanda Licenzi and our guest Lisa C. How you both doing?
Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi.
You okay?
Hello.
Feeling a little bit
Yep.
apprehensive and nervous about this, are you?
Yep.
Understandable. It's a very difficult subject to actually approach when you've experienced a level of trauma and, well, basically trauma and hurt that you've received throughout your life. But just in your own words, I mean, before your diagnosis, going back to your childhood, when did this all start?
It started. I first met what would become my stepfather.
Yep.
He's pretty much the reason that I have what I have. Uh, and I've never really opened up about it.
I
Well,
can.
it's good that you chose us to open up about. Obviously, we're close friends in real life. So I understand a bit of what you're going to talk about. And I'm just really glad that you feel comfortable enough. I think that it's great that you're going to talk about these things because I think that a lot of people will be able to relate, and you're an inspiration to me, and I know that your story is an inspiration to Raf as well. So I really just appreciate you coming on here, and I'm sure you're going to inspire lots of people to move forward with purpose as you have. And yeah, so we're glad you're here.
At what age did the abuse first start?
So I don't remember when,
Okay.
but I do remember when it got worse.
Okay.
Um, when my mom got pregnant with a baby, um, he had leverage over me.
In what respects?
He would threaten the baby. Um, I think one of his favorite things to threaten me with was that he would take the baby away and drive off a few uh, states off because we were in the United States at the time,
Okay.
and abandon the baby in an unknown orphanage under a different name.
And
Wow.
that was just to you, not to your mom.
No, my mom never knew any of this. Most of what we're going to talk about today, she's never heard before. Okay. Um, that must have been on top of the abuse you were suffering yourself. That's severe emotional abuse, especially at the young age that you were, and you weren't exactly given many options of what to do other than just endure it, basically. You weren't given the proper tools or support. So that must have been really awful. It's a choice that I made. I know it sounds weird because I was 12, but I at 12, because my parents split when I was really young, I thought that having a father in your life was better than not having him there. And he always said that as long as I didn't say anything, then, no one else would get hurt. But if I spoke up, I knew exactly what was going to happen. And, the threats of the baby, he, would threaten to take my mom's life as well. Uh, Wow. It
Second minute, you're okay.
Yeah. I knew that if if I took it on,
Yes.
he would never lay a hand on my mother or the baby, and um, it was something that I accepted because I thought it was better to have a father in there than not.
Was there a sense of wearing that kind of thing as pride to protect yourself or the siblings?
Back then, it was protect the baby. My whole world was that baby. Um, he was, it was the youngest of all of us, one that didn't ask to be here and that should be protected. And I was being told that if I complied to the abuse, then no harm would come to anyone else.
How did that affect your daily
You were
life?
12, so I mean, yeah.
Um, you're always on the lookout.
Okay.
You learn to know how someone behaves with the way they walk, the way they talk, the way they shrug. Uh, you make yourself as small as possible. You try to not exist. You become quiet and, um, just stick to yourself and nothing else.
So it basically dictated how you were moving forward in life. Basically, everything that you thought, said, did was all based on
Body
basically a threat
language
hanging over your head the entire.
and body language. To be having to read
Yeah.
body language at 12 years old is very difficult. What about school? Was there anybody at school that you could confide in, or did you confide in a family member or friend?
I tried at school. It didn't go well. Um, Back then, school counselors weren't equipped,
Agreed.
Yeah.
and it didn't go well. But I had one teacher in high school. Um, it dawned on me years later, like as an adult, that she would push me to read books about kids that were abused, and it didn't click back then. Um, but because after freshman year we were moving back to France after the USA,
Yeah.
she gave me a book to keep, and it wasn't that book. But when she gave me the book she gave me, she said, I can't give you the book I want to give you, but this one works as well.
Okay.
And
Wow.
I was going through my childhood things, I think like a decade ago, and when I saw the book, it just all like clicked.
Hmm. Wow. She knew. She was able to read you.
She saw the signs, yeah.
Yeah.
But back then, you like if like teachers weren't allowed to like coax you on things, so
No.
she couldn't come directly to me.
Yeah.
Teachers weren't even allowed to even like mention anything unless a student came out first. Um, but I realized years later that she knew the whole time.
She basically did everything she could within her limits to, yeah, at least be there for you.
Without alerting your parents, I suppose, or your
Yeah.
mother and your stepfather. Would that have been detrimental, do you think, if your mum and your stepfather would have been alerted to the situation at school?
So at the time that teacher knew, he was already out of our lives.
Oh, good.
When I went to high school, he didn't. He was gone. Not long, for less than a year, but he was gone. We had a restraining order on him, so he
For
wasn't allowed to
separate
come.
issues, like not for what he did to you, separate issues you had to restore. Your mother, I guess, had a restraining order on him. And
So one day he lost his temper,
mhm.
and he would be very good at knowing when to say things and when to just give me looks, or uh, he would ball his fist and I know what it would mean, things like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
But then one day he lost it, and I ran to the living room to my mom because I knew he wouldn't threaten me in front of my mom,
Mhm.
and he actually did. He yelled in a voice that only I knew that he would throw boiling hot coffee at me to burn
Oh
me.
my.
And when my mom heard that, she told him to grab his stuff and to kick him out, and he was gone within 10 minutes. Like, she didn't.
Your mom didn't hesitate when she saw it. She protected you immediately when she saw it. Oh.
And because I was a witness of things happening to my mom,
Yep.
we were able to get a restraining order because I had to testify. I wrote a letter, and I was at the courthouse to testify, but something happened and I got lucky. And the judge decided that I had suffered enough, and that my letter would be enough. And in my letter, I recalled the incident where he strangled my mom on the kitchen floor. And he only stopped because I yelled bloody murder. And I recounted a few examples of different things that he'd said to me. I gave enough that we would get a restraining order, but not enough that like red flags would go for me. I was pushed into, because I was a teenager, the judge forced me to like group therapy with two other girls, but their dad was so bad and they were still living with him. So I would always let them talk because I knew my monster wasn't at home anymore and they had to go back to theirs in an hour. So I would always let
That
them
was very big of you to even
Yeah, for sure.
think like that at such a young age. I mean,
It was also helpful because I didn't want to talk about it.
That's fair enough.
It's like I didn't want to talk. I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
And the girls needed it more than I did, and I was fine with giving my time away.
You know,
what was the knock-on effects for you personally? I mean, did you then, after he'd gone, did you begin to spiral out of control because of what abuse had taken part previously?
No, I was still in survival mode for a really long time.
Okay.
Because he stayed in our lives for another year until we moved back to France. He would have visits with his child. It was on the weekends. I think it was either once a week for a couple hours or every 2 weeks. Can't remember. But we would go to a police station. We would go inside. He would drive up. He would come inside. My mom would hand in the child, and then we would leave, drive away, and then he would drive away. And then a couple hours later, we would come back and do the same exchange the other way. After a while, I told my mom. My mom saw I couldn't be in the police station with her anymore. It was just too much. So I stayed in the car listening to the radio. But I was like checking. I was always turned around. Like we were facing the police station, but I was always checking for the van because his threat was still in my mind, and I knew it was the one thing that he could hurt us, me and my mom, with. And I was always worried of, will he bring the baby back or not?
Absolutely. That must have been terrifying for both you and your mom. I mean,
yeah,
awful. Yeah.
How did you find any kind of release from this? What was your coping strategy to get away from it all? Did you have a best friend?
Not at that time. At that time, I really isolated myself because I just did not know how to function with other people.
Okay.
When actually I did have a best friend.
That's okay.
It's just because
okay, take a breath.
Exceptionally brave.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nikki was the only one who knew, because what was happening at her house, which was across the street, she had a lot of things also going on.
Yeah.
And so we took refuge with each other.
I guess you're a source of strength for each other. And
She never made it to her 17th birthday.
Did she take her
So
own
sad.
life?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
She attempted, but got caught early enough. And then she faked being okay. And then the second time, she timed it better.
Did that inspire you to make you want to get through this? If I can use the word inspire in such a tragic situation.
For a long time, I actually felt guilty about it
Okay.
because when we moved back to France, I didn't keep up emailing. It was the transition back from American high school to French high school was insane. And so I just isolated myself more.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt really guilty for years because I thought,
no, but that's not.
Yeah,
I know that's not.
It took me years, but
Of course.
it's just like it was two peas in a pod. Like I would go over, I would knock, and like we didn't even have to talk. Like she would say, "Want to play video games or watch MTV?" And
Yeah.
It was.
And at any point, did you consider the self-harming or suicidal thoughts?
Yeah, when we went back to France, teenage hormones hit, and anger and rage were inside of me, and it became apparent that I had to come out. And for a while, listening to music and screaming in a pillow worked, but that didn't last long. And I always didn't want anyone to know because then I would have to explain why, and I didn't want to go through that.
Okay.
So whenever I did harm, I would have to be careful to do just enough that it would feel release, but not enough to like leave permanent marks that people would question things.
Was that a moment of realization of what not to do and what to do that you did want to survive?
Well, I still had a little toddler at that time.
Yep.
Who would be looking up to me, and I knew like I never smoked cigarettes, I never did alcohol, I never did drugs because I knew that those two little eyes are just looking up to you like you're their whole world.
Well, you had that level of protection from birth, basically, with your sibling, and your whole life was based around protecting your sibling, loving your sibling, watching over your sibling. So it makes sense that it dictated how you were moving forward as well. So, I mean, in that sense, I guess you could call it a blessing in disguise. It kept you as grounded as you possibly could be at a very young age, taking on responsibilities like that and that kind of just, moral obligation. That's a lot. You're an old soul in a very young body.
How was you feeling inside at
I've been
this
told that
time?
before.
How was you feeling inside mentally at this time? You're a teenager, you have got your friend. I'm sorry to say that she's not here any longer, but was there anything positive at all to grasp onto? Well, obviously, you had your sibling.
I don't know.
Okay.
One of the good/bad things about traumas and abuse is that your brain kind of wants to protect yourself, and it kind of erases a lot of things or it puts them away. And I'm very thankful for my brain, but I have very little memories of my childhood and teenage years. I don't know.
It's self-preservation, Yeah.
Any anger blackouts?
No, but I came close to one.
Okay.
when I was about 16. So you can imagine the hormones and, new country and trying to figure everything out and all of that. Um, I always felt something inside of me, but I never really knew what it was. But I knew that when I would get angry, it would like be quicker and it would be overwhelming and it would want to take over.
It would be overwhelming for you, but would other people witness it, or it was always just like at yourself, basically?
Not at first.
Mhm.
From the incident where I almost lost control, um, it was with my oldest sister, and from what she's told me afterwards, when at one point I basically told her go away or I'm gonna lose my mind, because I knew that if I lost my mind, something bad was gonna happen. She said my voice didn't sound the same and my eyes were like different. She said I could see murder in your eyes. And she says you weren't there anymore. And I know that I was very close to losing it and very close to doing something that I would not be able to control.
So just rage, just pure rage, basically.
Yeah. But like when it unleashes, you you black out literally. It's you're not even you don't really have a conscience of what's happening. Like you're how can I explain this? Um, so like in TV shows that I've rewatched after I've learned that I had borderline personality disorder.
Yes.
Once I was listening to one of the police shows and it hit me like a ton of bricks because at that moment I understood what was inside of me. Um, the police was questioning people and this woman was in jail for murder, but they couldn't find anyone to say one wrong thing about her. Not she was the nicest, the most patient. No one could even imagine her laying a hand on anyone, not even a slap or a little poof. It was
Yeah.
no one could understand. And when she was questioned in court, because TV, um, she when they asked her, she says, I blacked out. I don't remember. And the lawyer was saying you didn't black out because you were actively killing, murdering your husband. And she was like, no, I don't remember. Like she remembered the before when they were fighting, and then she remembered looking at her hands with blood and then her husband, but she never had the memory of it. And that's when I learned that if the rage takes over, the darkness inside of me, I myself is not there anymore. That darkness will do everything and anything.
That really
You're able to
resonated.
relate. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. It that day I didn't do anything after that.
No.
I think I rewatched that clip for like a good half hour, and then I took a nap because it hit me like a ton of bricks.
Wow.
In episode two that we're going to record, we're going to move on to the borderline personality disorder, the tactical behavior therapy that works with cognitive therapy. Um, is there anything you want to say now before we leave this episode?
I don't know.
Okay. How are you actually feeling for actually speaking out about this now?
Terrified.
Okay.
I've been shaking since we started.
Mhm.
I don't know if it's noticeable, but my whole lower body is like my arms and legs. I'm completely shaking.
What are you terrified of specifically? People's reactions, you mean, or more
Just
that it's even out there? And
it's stuff that I've never talked out loud to. There's a few people, you amongst them, that know the details, but there isn't really many people, and it's terrifying to admit that I was so brainwashed, I thought the abuse was enough.
Well, one could look at it that you're so brave that you did all of these things just to protect your sibling and that you still managed to move forward in life with obvious humor,
Yeah,
kindness,
for sure.
love,
Yeah.
just a great spirit. And I think that that's what people will see personally.
And thank you for your time today. And I'm sure we'll catch up later in the week and we'll do episode 2. Thanks, guys. Thanks for watching. Take care.
Absolutely. Bye.
Bye.